Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the always popular Live at 5. My name is Stanley, and today we have a very special Live at 5 event where you get to ask us anything, and we mean anything. And we really want you to take advantage of our guest today, Jen Sugar, who is the Director of Admission Services here at Carleton. She's here to really give you not only some insight into what's been happening over at admissions, but to help answer any questions you might have about your application, about different details in your offer of admission, really gain a good sense as to what will happen next as well. So she has a lot of really great information to give you. So please do us a favor, utilize the live event Q&A. To ask your questions. And not only is Jen here, my colleagues in the undergraduate recruitment office are here as well. So a lot of really great folks that are here to answer your questions. And it's really good to take a moment to reflect and to really think about where you were a few months ago before you even submitted an application to where you are now, a few months away from starting your post-secondary journey. So we thought it would be a really great chance to pause, to reflect, and to again give you a chance to ask your questions. So please do that throughout tonight's event. We're really looking forward to hearing from you. Now at Carleton, we start all of our events with the land acknowledgement, and we want to acknowledge that Carleton University is located on the traditional unceded territories of the Algonquin Nation. Really important for us to point that out. Okay, so like I mentioned, I know there's been a lot of things that have happened over the last few weeks, and there's still a lot more things to happen over the next coming weeks. And so what I wanted to do before we get into your questions is just take a quick moment to rhyme off some dates and deadlines, some dates that are coming up that you're going to want to keep in mind. The biggest date for our current Ontario high school students is June 1st. Now, that's the deadline for these students to respond to your offer of admission. It's a common deadline in Ontario, so all universities in Ontario have that same kind of idea of giving students at least until June 1st to start making some decisions, or at least to finalize their decisions with regards to their post-secondary destination. So if you're holding an offer of admission right now and you're an Ontario high school student, definitely keep that June 1st deadline in mind because it will be here before you know it. After you've accepted your offer of admission, if you are thinking about living in residence, your next deadline to keep in mind is June 8th at 4:30 p.m. Eastern time. That's the deadline to confirm your offer of residence. So when you look at your offer of admission package, you'll see some information about residence on how to respond to your residence offer. And what you want to do is you make sure you submit your response and you pay your $700 deposit, again, by that June 8th deadline at 4:30 p.m. Eastern time. Yes, it's very important to remember the date and the time for this particular deadline. From an awards perspective, there are a couple of bursary deadlines that are coming up. On April 2nd, you'll find the deadline to apply for our Leadership Entrance Bursary. Here's an opportunity for us for you to tell us about your involvement in your community, in your high school, really your leadership skills on full display. So please visit carleton.ca/awards. To find more information about our Leadership Entrance Bursaries. And then our next entrance bursaries, more of our general one, the deadline to apply for that is June 30th. So again, there are two different types of bursaries. The Leadership Entrance Bursary, that's April 2nd, and our General Entrance Bursaries, June 30th. Again, carleton.ca/awards is the site. An ongoing kind of, not deadline, but I guess action that's happening in our awards office is reviewing your entrance scholarship admission average. And so for students who were admitted with an 80% average or better, you would have received an entrance scholarship with your offer of admission. Now, let's say you got an offer of admission in January, and with that, you got an offer of scholarship or an entrance scholarship valued at, let's say, $8,000 over the course of 4 years. Well, if your average happens to increase between the time you receive your offer and throughout your grade 12 year, we will also increase your entrance scholarship. So that's happening constantly as we get new grades in. So you might get an email or a message from us saying, hey, your $8,000 scholarship is now $12,000 over the course of 4 years. So it's an incentive for you to keep at it, keep at your studies throughout your final year in high school, and hopefully we'll be able to reward you and award you a higher entrance scholarship should your average increase. So keep those dates in mind. Again, June 1st, June 8th, April 2nd, and June 30th, because those are the dates that we touched on. And if you have any questions about those dates, again, please use the live event Q&A. Now, the Live at 5 has been a great addition to our kind of virtual suite since the beginning of the fall, and we've really enjoyed connecting with students every Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. It's gone really, really well. We've had other additions to our kind of virtual I guess, suite as well, including the Talking Raven podcast. Now, yes, you're seeing double. That is me on the screen. I'm the host of the Talking Raven, but what I'm most happy about this podcast is being able to talk to so many great staff members as well as current students to really hear them share their story to you. So if you haven't done so yet, please, you can subscribe to the Talking Raven podcast wherever you get your podcasts. As a matter of fact, what you're able to do is, if you have a Spotify account, is open up your camera, you can scan the barcode that's on your screen, and that'll bring you directly to our Talking Raven page. And from there, you can listen to all the awesome episodes we've had thus far, including the one that just came out this week, all about outcomes. So definitely check out the Talking Raven podcast. And of course, keep on, and we'll talk about this again later on, but keep checking your 360 account for new events that are going to be coming up over the next few weeks, with a lot of exciting things happening that are faculty specific and student services as well. So a lot of great ways for you to connect with us virtually. So excited to be able to tell you more about that, and excited to welcome our guest this evening. Again, Jen Sugar, Director of Admission Services, who's going to start by kind of giving you a brief overview, summary of where we were, where we're at, and then it's on to you. And I see there's some questions that are already popping in the Q&A, so love seeing that. So please keep on asking your questions. We're going to address those live with Jen. So Jen, first, welcome to the Live at 5, and you'll be on screen, and feel free to give us an update.
Thanks, Dan. That's awesome, and I can see some of the questions in here. So I'm not going to take too much time, but I did want to just kind of give an update of where we're at in regard to the admission process right now. So we're right in the middle of it, really. We're sending out offers of admission, and we have been for quite a while. For those of you who don't know, especially for our Ontario students, when you apply for admission through the Ontario University Application Centre and you attend an Ontario high school, your grades get automatically sent to us, but your grades get sent to us sort of in chunks. And so we receive rounds of grades for our Ontario students. And so the first round of grades that we received for our Ontario students was back in November 2020. We just received a round of grades not that long ago in February for our Ontario students. And the next round of grades that we're going to receive is going to be at the end of April. And so what happens is when we calculate your admissions average, we use a combination of grade 11 and grade 12 grades. So we use the grades that we're getting, and we calculate an average. We check for the prerequisites that are needed for the program that you applied to. And then as soon as you've reached the correct admission average that we're using at the time, we send you an offer of admission. And so what that's called rolling offers of admission. So basically what it means is that we're almost always making offers of admission. And so sometimes when students don't have an offer of admission, they'll contact us. And usually what the case is that maybe the average isn't quite as high as what we need at that time of the year, or it could be that we're waiting for a grade in a prerequisite course that's really needed for the program that you applied to. And so in a lot of cases, if a student hasn't received an offer yet, it's for one of those reasons. It could also be because a student has applied to a program that requires a portfolio or a supplementary application, something like architecture or industrial design, maybe music or social work. All of those programs require additional information, and in most cases that additional information was due on March 1st. And so what you need to remember is that if you applied for one of those programs and you haven't received an offer yet, that makes sense, because what's happening right now is in all of those different areas, all of those different departments are reviewing the supplementary information, reviewing the portfolios, and making decisions about who they want us to send offers of admission to. So usually offers for those programs get sent out somewhere near the end of March, even into all the way into the middle of April. And so we work through those as quickly as we can. But because there's that extra step of the department reviewing what you submitted for your portfolio, those offers tend to take a little bit longer. One of the other things that I wanted to touch on is what eligible for admission means, because it's a question that we often get, and I can see that it's already in the chat. So at Carleton, what happens is that we only send one offer of admission at a time. And so we will always try to send an offer of admission to a student's first choice program. But sometimes what happens is a student will apply for two different things. They'll apply for something that's their first choice, and then they apply for their second choice program. When we look at the application, sometimes we can't make a decision on the first choice yet. And so we'll leave that one pending because, like I said, maybe we're waiting for a portfolio, or maybe we're waiting for a grade. But when we look at that second choice application, we can make a decision. So we'll tag that application as eligible. And so what that means is that you're eligible for an offer of admission. If you wanted to make that second choice your first choice right at that moment, you would be eligible for an offer of admission. Sometimes what happens is a student is given an offer to their first choice, and then we label their second choice as eligible. And what that tells them is, yes, you got an offer to your first choice, but if you wanted an offer to your second choice, you could have that too. So that's really what eligible for admission means. The only little extra that I have to kind of put on that is that you're only eligible for that offer of admission for as long as that program is open. So sometimes what happens is a student will receive an offer of admission to their first choice. Then we tell them that they're eligible for their second choice, and they're fine with that, and they keep their offer to their first choice. But then way down the road in July or August, they'll come to us and say, you know what, I had a change of heart, and I don't really want my first choice anymore. I'd like an offer to my second choice. And we can only do that if there's still space in the program. So it's always dependent on whether there's space in the program. So that's just a little bit about being eligible. The other question that we get a lot is, what's a conditional offer? I'd say 99% of our offers are conditional. And when we send those out, sometimes people contact us and ask us what that means. Well, what that means is that your offer is conditional on your final grades. And what we'll do is we send you information about what level those final grades need to be at, what the individual prerequisite grades need to be, and what your overall average needs to be on your final average in order for you to keep your offer of admission. Because what we do is we send an offer of admission knowing that you still have courses in progress. And so, of course, we still want you to do well, and we still want you to keep a particular average all the way until the end of the year. And so that's what a conditional offer means. It means that if you don't keep that particular average, it could mean that we take that offer away. So it's important to keep going and, keep paying attention all the way till the end of the year. And definitely you have to keep attending and doing all that. Sometimes we get questions saying, does that mean that I can stop going to high school now? Like, now that I have a conditional offer, can I just stop going to school? And the answer is, of course, no. The other thing that I wanted to mention is about the scholarship reassess, which Stanley talked about. We're reassessing scholarships, and normally we would only reassess scholarships up until April, until we get those grades in April. But this year we're going to be doing 2 more assessments on scholarships. So we'll be looking at your grades in April and reassessing scholarships and seeing if we can boost your scholarship offer. And then actually we'll be looking again at the end of the year on your final grades and recalculating that scholarship average again. And so you'll have a couple more chances to really get your average as high as you can possibly get it, to get the maximum amount of scholarship money that you're entitled to. And then the last thing that I want to touch on maybe before we go into maybe a couple more questions is the concept of summer courses. Sometimes people ask us if it's okay if they don't have 6 courses by the end of the year, if they drop one right now, and if they pick it up in the summer. And the answer to that is it really depends. And it depends on the program that you've applied to. So it's really important if you're planning on doing something like that and not having 6 courses by the end of the year and taking something over the summer, it's really important for you to contact us and let us know what you're thinking of doing so that we can let you know whether that's even an option for your program. There are certain limited enrollment programs where you might be putting yourself in jeopardy by doing that, and then other scenarios where it would be okay for you to retake something in the summer. But we really need to evaluate your individual situation if you're thinking about doing that. So those are some of the frequently asked questions, but Stan, I don't know if there's other things that you're seeing come up in the chat.
Yeah, definitely. And we're having a conversation with Jen Sugar, who's Director of Admission Services, and she's answering your questions. So please keep bringing those questions in. I had kind of led off the presentation by talking about Ontario high school students, but of course, there are other types of applicants that we see. So a question here from someone who is an adult applicant and is not applying directly from Ontario High School. How different is the application process compared to kind of the standard application for an Ontario High School student?
Right. So for an Ontario high school student, you're right. It is very straightforward. It's quite simple. And the Ontario high school students, everyone really needs to apply through the Ontario University Application Centre, and there are 2 different applications. There's the 101 application form, which is for the Ontario high school students, and then there's the 105 application form, which is literally for everybody else. And so if you were an adult applicant, then you would use that 105 application form, but how we assess you is dependent very much on what other types of schooling you've done besides high school. So, of course, our adult applicants come to us from a lot of different places. Some have attended college, some have attended other universities. And so really the way it works is that you submit the application through the Ontario University's Application Centre, and then you arrange to have all of your transcripts from any post-secondary studies you've ever attempted sent to us. And that's really what forms the basis of admission, and that's how we're going to evaluate you for admission. The one thing that I will say is that one misconception that's out there is sometimes adult applicants think that the prerequisite requirements don't apply to them because they have passed a certain age. But I'll just say here, just for clarity, that the prerequisite requirements for a program always apply. And one of the things that we can do just to make it a little easier is in the chat, we can put some links to our admissions homepage where you can search for what the prerequisite requirements are to make sure that you have those courses. But if you're someone who's coming back after an absence or coming to us after you've attended college or university, and you really want to make sure that you have what you need, you can always contact us through admission services, and we can have someone contact you and discuss your history, your academic history, to talk about the best way for you to apply. So that's a little bit about sort of adult applications. And I see underneath that question, there's a question about whether there's a specific day that offers of admission are sent. Short answer to that is no. Every single day we send offers of admission. We have a team of admissions officers working on literally hundreds of files every day. And so we are always sending offers of admissions. There is no specific day.
So we don't have like make an offer Mondays going on in our office.
We don't. I might be able to kind of put that up there. see if the team would agree to it.
There was a question about timing of offers. One student who asked when they'll hear from us because some of their friends have, but they haven't yet. And I know you touch a bit about, students who may have applied to portfolio-based programs, but maybe give me some more insight into that process.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's important to, the first thing that I would say is if you haven't heard from us, make sure that you're logging into Carleton 360 so that you can look at the status of your application, because that'll tell you that'll tell you quite a bit. Usually if you see that it says something like pending, it means that we're waiting for something. So back to sort of what I described before, we're waiting for a course, we're waiting for your average to be higher, something like that. But if you see that your application says incomplete, items outstanding, it means that we need something from you. And so you'll see that there's a checklist of items there that you'll be able to upload documents against. And so it could be that we're waiting for something from you. So the first thing that I'd recommend, if you haven't heard from us yet, and if you've looked on UAC and there's no decision there yet, is to log into Carleton 360 and take a look at the status that you see there and the messages that are there. And if there's something that you think is a bit weird, like you think we have all of your courses and, your average is in the 90s and you can't possibly imagine why we wouldn't have made you an offer yet, then absolutely get in touch with us and we will look into your individual file and we'll be able to answer that question for you.
One of the questions that comes up a lot is about the fall and what the fall might look like. And someone was asking if it's possible to do the fall semester remotely. I know you talked a bit about this last night. It was really great. So maybe you can talk a bit about what things may look like, where we're at with the pandemic and how it affects the fall semester.
Yeah, so the short answer is that we don't totally know yet because there's still a lot of information that we don't have. And so we're working closely as a university with Ottawa Public Health to try to figure out, moving forward, what's the most realistic scenario for us we're as a university in terms of opening up and of course being safe, because as much as we all want to get back to work and get back to school and get back onto our beautiful campus, we want to make sure that everyone's safe in doing that. And so we're taking our direction from Ottawa Public Health. And so in terms of fall format, that's a question that we're getting right now is, will things be online? Will they be in person? And it's really impossible to say for sure right now. I think one of the things that has been talked about, though, is the possibility of maybe bringing back some smaller classes, maybe some labs and some smaller classes, and having those things in person, but some of our very large lectures and so on, that those things would remain online. So some type of a hybrid model. But again, it still is a bit too early to say for sure what that would look like. I'll just say that there are a lot of levels of the university that are engaged in this conversation right now. And as soon as we have information to give to students and parents, we will. So please keep an eye on our admissions website, because that's where we're going to start posting sort of our frequently asked questions, especially in regard to return and fall format, and all of the information that we're going to have rolling out in regard to COVID and what our campus is going to look like in fall. So a little bit of a stay tuned on that one.
So we're chatting with Jen Sugar, who's the Director of Admission Services at Carleton, and we're answering your questions. So and there's some more that are coming in, and thank you for that. We've got a student who got an offer, accepted their offer. So thank you for accepting, and welcome to the Carleton fan. Yeah, round of applause to you. And their question is, when do I get to choose my classes?
Yeah, that's a great question. So that's going to be your next big step as a Carleton student. So now that you've accepted your offer of admission, what will happen is sometime in May, it will be the next time that you hear from us in regard to registration information. So we're going to send you a whole bunch of different information in regard to how to pick your classes, how to register, like actually physically how to register, how to get onto our registration system, how to use it, how to get help if you have trouble using it, how to actually pick your classes, like how do you know what to pick, how do you register, all of those things. So all that information will be coming to you in May. The other thing that will be coming to you in May is all the information that you need in order to kind of get set up as a Carleton student. So like how to get a campus card and, how to take advantage of co-op and all of the things that you need to get settled before the fall. And so that will be the next chunk of information that comes to you. Registration itself, won't begin until sort of the end of June into the middle of July. And so you'll have a lot of time to spend with the information that we send you in May to go through it, to make sure that you understand it, and to make sure that you're ready to register when your registration slot actually opens up. But that's a great question, because that's your next big thing as a Carleton student.
I got a couple of scenario type questions. So scenario one is if a student has applied to multiple programs at Carleton, and let's say they got an offer to their choice 2 or choice 3 before they heard back from their first choice. If they decide to wait for their first choice program, could they lose out on their offer from choice 2 or choice 3?
Right. So the short answer is it sort of depends on a couple of things. So one, it depends on how long you wait in terms of answering us. But what you have to remember is, if you remember, Stenley talked about the deadlines for Ontario high school students earlier in the presentation. And so we said that the earliest date by which we can ask you to respond to an offer of admission is June 1. And so that's the soonest by which we can ask you to respond to an offer of admission. And really, in the vast majority of cases, we're going to have offers out before that June 1 date. And so there will be no real requirement for you to respond to an offer of admission from anyone, from any of the Ontario universities before that date. And so you can just leave that second and third choice offer, just knowing that you have that, knowing that you're eligible for that program, and see if you can get into your first choice program. Once we start getting into kind of late June, that's when, maybe early July, that's when some things that are extremely limited enrollment might start closing, and we might stop making offers of admission to those programs. So those would be things like aerospace engineering, mechanical engineering, biomedical mechanical engineering, things like that. Some of our really, really small limited enrollment programs, those will be things that we stop making offers to. So those would be the only ones that you really, really want to watch for in that kind of June date. Other than that, you should be fairly safe in waiting until you get answers for all of your choices before deciding, okay, this is what I want to do.
And the other scenario was about summer. So what happens if I need to take a class in summer school? Will I still be able to get in?
That's sort of what I was talking about in my opening remarks, and that's a great question. And again, the short answer is it depends a little bit on what you've applied to. So, you know, if we're waiting for something in the summer from you, and you've applied to something that's limited enrollment, like the programs that I just listed, the chances of you getting in are basically zero, because we're going to stop making offers of admission to those programs before you have a chance to get us that summer grade. The one thing I will recommend, and one thing I will say, is that if you are thinking of taking a class in the summer, definitely reach out to us and let us guide you as to whether that would work for you, for your scenario, for the program that you're thinking of. But even if we say, yes, this will work, you can take a class in the summer and you can still be eligible for your program, remember that we're going to want you to take that class in the early part of summer. So we're going to want you to take that class with where you're finishing the class in July. So definitely under no circumstances will you be taking a class in the second summer session where the grade will only be coming to us in August, because that's going to be far too late.
Jen, you talked about the conditional offer of admission and how students shouldn't leave school once they receive an offer. They should stick to it. But a student asked the question, do I need to have the same average at the end of the year to keep the offer?
The short answer is no. So with your offer of admission, there were a bunch of links, and one of them says maintaining your conditional offer. And when you click on that, you'll see sort of a table of all of the different degree programs, and you'll find your degree program in there, and it will say, you know, for this program, this is the final average that you need to maintain, and these are the individual grades for the prerequisite courses that you need to maintain. And so in all of the cases for all the different degree programs, it's different for each of the different degree programs, but it's always lower than what we use to make you your offer in the first place. So you don't have to keep the average that we gave you your offer with.
We are approaching the end of our presentation, but we still have some time for some more questions. So if you have some, please continue to send them in. There was a question about the supplementary documents. Someone asked if we were really hard in terms of those documents, and they gave the example of if there were a few mistakes that were made on the document, how would it hinder their application?
I think I'm just going to ask the asker of that question to just kind of clarify, when they say supplementary documents, do they mean things like what I was talking about before, like the portfolios, or like for social work, there's a supplementary application and things like that? I'm going to assume that the answer is yes. So I'll give my first answer on that idea, and if it's not, then I'll clarify based on what the person responds in the Q&A there. So for the supplementary documents or supplementary admission requirements, whether it's portfolio or something that was asked for, let's say those essays that were asked for by the school of social work, they read those. The schools and the institutes and like architecture, industrial design, social work, they're the ones who read those things. Admissions doesn't read those. So those when you submit extra documents like that, they are in support of your application, and it's kind of a way for you to have an interview with them without actually being present. So I don't know that they're not worried about small errors or things like that. They're trying to assess your overall creativity, and they're trying to assess sort of your overall approach to answering questions and to see if you're a good fit for the program. I don't know that they're overly worried about small errors, because they're really trying to get a whole picture of you. But again, I don't know if the question was really geared towards those types of supplementary documents or something else.
So if you asked that question and you're still here with us, please send us another kind of follow-up question so we can hopefully kind of clarify that for you. When you mentioned the limited programs, there was it sparked a question about social work. Is social work considered one of those limited enrollment programs?
Right. So the question, I can see it here, is social work a very limited enrollment program? Short answer, yes. So social work actually only takes, social work admits people in different year levels. And so high school students, for example, are admitted to year 1, and there's only 40 people who are admitted to the program. And so students coming to us from college transfer are admitted to second year, and so on and so forth. So if you're a high school student and you're applying to social work, you're basically competing for one of 40 spaces. So the short answer to that question is yes. It's incredibly limited enrollment. So getting a spot in social work is a bit like winning the lottery. So.
Now what we'll do is, because we did get that follow-up question from the student who asked about the supplementary documents, but maybe Jen, we'll save that for kind of an offline conversation, if you will.
Sure.
So we'll definitely get to that question towards kind of the end of our session.
Okay.
There was one more kind of remaining question about evaluating the 105 application, and if a student has a university background or post-secondary background, how are those grades weighed compared to their high school marks? And if are they looking for, or your office looking for, other factors when evaluating those type of applications?
Right. So so when we're evaluating a 105 application and someone has studied at college or at university, it's a great question, because we do take into, we factor, we look at everything, but our assessment is done based on the highest level of study attempted. So in a case where a student has done high school and then maybe, I don't know, done a year of college and then done a year of university, for us, the admission average would be calculated on the basis of the university studies, because it is the most relevant and the most accurate predictor of how a student will do with us, because we are doing university level study here. And so that's sort of the short answer to how we look at that. It's a tiny bit more complicated than that, but it really is based on the highest level of study. In terms of prerequisites, though, it is quite common that I don't know, if a student did 2 years at the University of Windsor and then applied to us for biology, but their 2 years of study at the University of Windsor were in film studies, we would use their University of Windsor studies as their basis of admission. That's how we calculate their average. But we would go back to their high school to find the needed prerequisite courses for that biology program. So we'd go back to that high school transcript to be able to look for that advanced functions course and then those 2 experimental sciences. So that's kind of how we would look at that. And then in regard to the question about work history and volunteer work, etc., our assessment is strictly academic and we don't take any of those additional things into account. So work history is not something that we take into account, or volunteer, or any of those things.
I think we'll leave it at that. But thank you, Jen, for answering so many questions. And folks, if you have more questions that come up later tonight, Jen will be making an appearance tomorrow evening at our parent evening event. So you can invite your parents, or you can just log in yourself and listen to Jen share some more insightful information and perhaps ask your questions there. But Jen, thanks again for answering all those questions. And again, thank you all for attending tonight's Live at 5. It's super exciting when we get a chance to connect with you, and we'll be back next Wednesday with another exciting Live at 5 event. Please, if you want to see our full schedule of upcoming Live at 5s, you can visit us on our admissions website, admissions.carleton.ca/live-at-5. Where you can also check your 360 account for information on more events, including our March open house that's happening this weekend. It started last weekend, where we featured our Faculty of Engineering and Design and our Faculty of Science. On Friday, our Sprott School of Business will be on center stage, and then we'll have our Faculty of Public Affairs and our Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences on Saturday. But more information, including registration information, on 360.carleton.ca. And finally, yes, we are on the gram, so check us out at Carleton_future. There's a lot of really cool content there. Great way for you to connect with us too. Let us know what you're thinking, how you're feeling through that social media platform. Okay, I'm going to stop talking. We will stick around to answer your questions in the live event Q&A chat. And again, thank you so much for attending. Have a great night, and we hope to see you soon.